So in this video, I'm going to tell you the truth about the Red Komodo as someone that's now owned and operated it for about a month or so, and I've done a lot of testing with this camera, and today I want to talk about my honest opinion of it. If you're new to the channel, my name is Spencer Sakurai. I'm a cinematographer. I've been doing this for the last 10 years. And if you're interested in Red Komodo content, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right now because there's gonna be more of that coming up on the channel soon. And give me a thumbs up halfway through this video if you think it's worth that to you. Now, I've already made a video over the Red Komodo, but it doesn't really do the camera justice. Now that I've actually purchased one myself and I've been shooting on it for about a month, I recently did a 3-day commercial shoot with it, and I've really done a lot of testing with it. And I kind of know this camera from a different level than I did before when I only had it for a few days to test. So in this video, I want to talk about why I bought it, why I'm happy with the purchase. Yes, I'm happy with the purchase, and some of the pros and cons of the camera, but really I want to talk about why I bought it from a business standpoint, why it was an investment for me, because I bet a lot of you are confused because I've been such a proponent of buying less expensive cameras and using those on bigger shoots or whatever because image quality is so good now for the cost. I obviously talk about the Blackmagic pocket cameras on here a lot, or even just the Blackmagic cameras because they're so inexpensive for the image quality, but that's not everything when it comes to investing in yourself and in your camera, and that's what we're going to get into today with this video. But a camera is just a tool, and all tools have their strengths and their weaknesses, and this one has plenty of both, let me tell you. So why did I decide to get the Red Komodo and leave my Blackmagic Pocket 6K behind? The reality is, I mean, a Pocket 6K is not an Arri Alexa. It's just that simple. The Arri Alexa is a beast of a camera and can do things that the Pockets just can't quite do. On the other side of it, I'm not shooting stuff all the time where I absolutely have to have an Arri Alexa, which is why I was kind of looking for something in between the whole time, and that's where the Red Komodo kind of fit in. The Red Komodo isn't that expensive relative to an Arri Alexa. You know, an Arri Alexa Mini right now, you know, $35,000 used, $50,000 new. Didn't really need to spend that much money. You know how I feel about spending that much money on a camera. Like, rent a camera if you really want the quality, you have the budget for it, rent that camera. Not to say that there's not a good investment there at some point. If you have enough work in that space and you can rent it out enough, well then yeah, having an Arri Alexa is totally fine. But for what I do, it just didn't seem necessary. I wanted to go something a little bit cheaper, but still give me the best quality possible for the money. And that's why I've always been a proponent of the Pocket 6K because it was very inexpensive. It barely cost anything really for what it can do, but I needed to level up a little bit. And you're probably thinking, Spencer, but you don't need to level up. You make a Pocket 6K look great, and I appreciate that. You think that, I think that as well. But there's something to be said about using a camera that is designed more for cinema use in a more professional space. But I purchased the Komodo for a couple of different reasons. One being the image quality. Now this is a big debate. The image quality of a camera, it's just like all cameras are good right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the Red Komodo has better image quality than any other camera on the market, and that's why I bought it. Because first off, every tool that you own is used for a different reason, right? So really you're looking for the camera or the tool that best fits your workflow. And so that's what I was looking for in the market. I wanted to buy something that, honestly, something that I could charge for, something that was reliable, something that gave me an amazing image, and something that would last a little bit longer because I was going to be spending a little bit more money on it. For the amount of money that I spent on this camera, the image quality is very, very good. And I would say that it's as good, if not better, than most other Red cameras. I've shot on most of the Red cameras, and there's always been a certain look to a Red camera that I really didn't always just love. It's always like, man, the quality's there, the sharpness is there, there's a lot of texture there. More texture than like on an Arri camera, because the Arri camera has, I mean, less resolution. It's designed to be a little bit more softer, look more like film, whereas the Red's not really trying to do that. The Red is trying to give you like just a really crisp image right out of the camera. But what I like about the Komodo is there's something a little different about it. The color science is different than the other Red cameras in my opinion. Yes, it's using the same color pipeline, but I do feel like the colors just look nicer out of this camera. They're less orange, I would say. The skin tones are less of that yellow-orange look, and it's something that I find very nice about this camera compared to the other Red cameras. But let me get into that a little bit more just real quick. The reality is this camera is giving you a raw image, a real raw image, which means that you're getting the truest form possible basically from an image standpoint coming from the sensor, which means I'm just getting a negative. I'm getting a pure negative that I can do whatever I want to with in post, and I'm not ever really stressing the color science. We've talked about on the channel before that color science doesn't really matter. If you use a color chart and a gray card and you can just dial in colors however you want, you should be able to do that on a camera that shoots RAW. And so the whole argument about color science is kind of silly when we're talking about a true RAW camera like this. That being said, that's what I was looking for, right? I was looking for, you know, decent resolution, because honestly, a lot of people do want resolution these days. You look at the Arri Alexa, its resolution isn't very high. Actually, the Mini only does a fake 4K. It's actually only shooting 3.2K and up-resing it. But clients do want that. They want the ability to punch in and move around, and I hate that is a thing, but that is a reality. So a lot of times shooting in 6K can be very beneficial. You know, I've talked about this before, but we've talked about someone like David Fincher. He shoots all of his movies in the highest resolution possible because he wants to be able to reframe in post, stabilize in post, and just have that ability. If you're going to own a camera for yourself, why get rid of some of those features when you can have those features, and so you can use those as ways of helping you out in the future. Someone like me, I often beg to color grade my own footage and process my own footage, and that's something that I have the luxury of doing because I really fight for it. Some people never even get to be a part of the color grading. They just shoot something and they walk away. So when it comes to that, you want to, you know, try to get the best look you can in camera, but for me, I fight. I'm shooting on my camera. I'm making sure I'm shooting on the lenses I want to shoot on, getting the look that I want. I'm using a very specific LUT that I build for every single shoot to make sure that I'm getting the look what I want out of a camera, and I try to even color grade it myself to make sure I have full control over the pipeline. And so when I do that, I can kind of use any camera I want as long as I'm planning for it across the whole process, across the whole workflow line. And so I knew that going into this purchase. I knew that I didn't have to have an Arri Alexa. The thing about an Arri Alexa is like, man, you turn that thing on, it just kind of works. Things just look right. They just look nice. You can send it off to anyone, and it's like they definitely can screw it up in post, but like if you can bake in your look a little bit in that camera, you're gonna be able to get something really nice and it can't be messed up. Whereas if I send a red RAW file to someone, man, they're gonna be able to do so much to it, and it can make you nervous. But like I said, I try not to let that happen. Anyways, all that to be said is that I'm getting a really nice negative out of this camera, and that's what I was looking for. I was looking for something that could shoot RAW, decent frame rates. The frame rates aren't amazing on this, but with the speed booster that I bought for it, I'm not really worried about the crop when I'm using higher frame rates. That doesn't really bother me because in the end, it's just like using my Pocket 6K in the end. I can up the frame rates and I put the speed booster on there and I'm not having any crop issues on the camera. But like I said, it has basically the same image, if not better image than most other Red cameras, and it's only $6,000. Now I did pay a little extra for my camera to buy it off of someone that had bought 2 of them because I wanted to get it before a shoot recently, and I did not want to wait around for 3 months because these cameras still are on like a 3-month back order if you try to order one now new. And I didn't want to deal with that. I paid extra for it. It was worth it for me. I was able to use it on a shoot 2 weeks after I bought it, and that shoot already helped pay off some of the camera. So the image doesn't come without a few downsides. I don't know if you looked into this camera at all online, but a lot of people will say this camera is pretty noisy. Now there's a few reasons for that. A couple reasons are people aren't properly black shading the camera. Black shading basically is just recalibrating the sensor, the noise pattern on the sensor in different temperature and different environments. So the manufacturer Red highly recommends that you black shade this camera before each setup, a new setup, the temperature changes too much. You want to be able to black shade the camera to make sure the noise looks right. But that being said, I think what I found with my testing of this camera is that it just doesn't like low light. And that's hard because a lot of modern cameras right now, just even something like an A7S III, the low light is so good on these cameras. These modern cameras have built-in noise reduction. They're being compressed into a 10-bit space, and it's so easy to get rid of noise when you do that. Well, when you shoot RAW, you don't have that ability. There is no internal noise reduction. You are working with pure data basically coming out of a camera. This camera can still be noisy even if you shoot in ProRes 422, if you're not black shading correctly. But like I've said on this channel many times, you need to expose for middle gray properly. Now I've made videos over this in the past, but basically I always like to expose just a little bit brighter than you would think to, and then I bring everything down in post. That way you always have a clean image. Now this is annoying. Coming from, I'm sure sure if you're new to this space and you're coming from a mirrorless camera, you're like, I don't want to do that. I want to be able just to shoot and just get a good image and then send it off. And I don't blame you. I agree with that sentiment. But when you start to get up into this space where you're getting with these high resolution raw cameras, you're going to have some caveats like this. So the camera can be a little noisy, but I'm just very particular about how I expose all my cameras. I always have been, and it's no different for me with this camera. So this works with my workflow. I just always have a gray card handy on set before each setup. I check my false color on the monitor, and I make sure that gray card is very close to middle gray, showing some green on the false color. If not green, very close to green, so I know that I am not, destroying the image, where I'm gonna have to add noise reduction in post, which is totally easy, by the way. You throw this in DaVinci, you click some noise reduction on there, and all that noise will go away, no problems. You will have a little bit of softening that happens on the image. This is very common in Hollywood. It's very common all over the place. Noise reduction is used all the time. If you weren't told that it was there, you wouldn't even notice it. Your camera's doing it internally already on these mirrorless cameras. It's really not a big deal. It's just something that you have to remember to do. For me, not a problem at all. I usually just expose right. Yes, I can't run and gun with the camera like I would with maybe like a Sony camera, but that's not really what I do for a living. Like, what I do for a living is shoot commercials and music videos, and I properly light everything because that's what I like to do. I want to control the image. I'm not trying to just go grab something. If you're off doing a documentary, don't use this camera. Use something like an Sony FX3 or FX6 with built-in NDs and micro adjustments and high ISOs and dual native ISOs. That's the camera for that situation. This is not the camera for you. And so actually, when I recently did this last project that I shot with this camera, this commercial, the post house was needing to spit out the content very fast. And they were doing a bunch of visual effects on it. And so they asked me politely, like, can we shoot in 4K? And I was like, well, I'm not going to do 4K RAW because that will crop the sensor way too much for the entire commercial. When we were shooting in tight spaces, I wanted to shoot really wide. I did not want to sacrifice that, even with my speed booster on there. So I said, how about we shoot it in 4K ProRes 422, which this camera does have the ability to do, which is very nice. So we're getting a 10-bit image. It's going to add a smidge of noise reduction because it's going to sample from the 6K color and bring it down into a 4K space, which actually gives you a little bit more color depth to work with when you're in that 10-bit space. That's a whole other topic, but it was actually really easy. As long as I was exposing for middle gray, the image looked really nice. I'm the one that's going to color grade it in the end after they do the visual effects. It's going to be really easy for me to handle that footage, and that's actually a bonus feature, I would say, of this camera. If you're worried about the noise so much, well, you can shoot in ProRes in those situations and help with that noisy bits of the camera. I think it's really awesome that you can actually shoot ProRes on here as well as the RAW, so you have both options depending on what you're doing. So when talking about the image, something I want to talk about is the dynamic range. Now, it's rated at very high dynamic range. All Red cameras say they have like 16 plus stops of dynamic range, and I would say that's true. I bet there is a lot of dynamic range here. I didn't have a lot of problems with this, but if you are trying to expose from middle gray, you are going to clip those highlights pretty fast. This is not an Arri Alexa. It's not going to be able to just retain highlight latitude very, very, very well. You're going to need to up your ISO a little bit and kind of remap the sensor to get in a realm where the highlights are being saved, and you're going to have to ND down. I feel like the highlights just kind of clip faster than other cameras, which I guess that means that all the latitude's really in the shadows, so there's a lot of detail in the shadows still left. But then you're gonna have to add noise reduction to those shadows. So it's kind of a weird thing. Plenty of dynamic range, nothing I would ever complain about, but it's just not really competing with Alexa. And I guess what we're really talking about here is the highlight fall off. When it does start to clip, it's how it looks when it clips. Now, in a Red camera, it's suggested that you use the traffic light system on here, which basically will tell you when you're clipping your red, green, or blue channel in the highlights or the shadow. And as long as you're not clipping there, you're not gonna have any issues. But what I have found is it's not too bad. You can clip those a little bit and they don't look that bad, but you can't push them super far like you might with an Alexa. You can kind of clip an Alexa a little farther and the highlights just don't look as crunchy as digital. But as long as you stay within the traffic lights, everything is pretty good. But something I would say is use those traffic lights to not clip, but make sure you're still exposing middle gray and light appropriately. Just because you're not clipping does not mean you're actually exposing middle gray correctly, and your camera can still get pretty noisy. So the reason I'm able to sit here and talk about my camera and give you this information is because, we have supporters of the channel like Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to present your work online. Listen, if you don't have a website, it's time to make one, and you're gonna probably just wanna do that with Squarespace because it's super easy. You pick out one of their pre-existing templates, you modify it how you want your website to look and feel. You can upload your video content there so easy. You just embed your Vimeo links or your YouTube links or whatever you wanna do. And then, put all your contact information on there and you'll have a website so people can actually hire you for your video work. So if that's something you're interested in, you can click the link in the description to get 10% off. And I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So enough talking about the image quality and specs. This brings me to the next part of why I purchased this camera, and it really comes down to optics. Probably heard this before, and I really don't like talking about it, but the truth is the truth, and I'm not gonna deny it. The Red name actually helps on production. Now, I've been doing this a long time. I've shot on Red a bunch, I've shot on Arri a bunch, I've shot on just my pocket camera a bunch. But what I can say was that when you start breaking into the territory of spending a lot more money on a shoot and the client's expecting more of you, you don't really want to show up with a little Blackmagic pocket camera. It's just not gonna feel right for them. That being said, this is a very small camera, it's just a little camera, but it does have the Red name on it. And what I've done, and this is the reason I've done this, if you watch my video of me building my camera rigs, I bought the biggest, basically most expensive camera rig you can get. Bright Tangerine and Wooden Camera make a really big camera kit for this, and I bought the Wooden Camera one because I wanted to kit it out. I wanted it to be big and I wanted it to be functional. I didn't want to have any issues with it on set. I did not want to be walking around and be like, oh, well, I can't do that with this camera because of this, this, and that. No, I wanted to have every single thing on this camera that would be on a real professional cinema camera with no restraints. With doing that, that helps with the optics of it. And I don't mean the lens optics, I mean how people are viewing it. They're like, oh, look, that's a cinema camera. Oh, it's a Red digital camera. It shoots 6K RAW, right? And I want to make sure the client knows that and make sure that they're getting a camera that is reliable. Reds have their issues, of course. Clients don't necessarily know what issues that these cameras can have. They might know, though, that most Apple TV Plus shows are shot on a Red-bodied camera. It's actually a Panavision DXL2, but it's made by Red. Lots of Hollywood movies, the new Suicide Squad shot on Red. Yes, a lot of them are shot on Arri Alexas as well. So you're really like looking for a Red or Alexa or a Sony Venice, but that's another $60,000 camera that we're not talking about today. So the name actually does help. And what this allows me to do is also be able to charge appropriately for a camera package. If I just walk in there with a little $1,000 DSLR or mirrorless camera, they're not gonna pay for that. They can just go buy their own. But you walk in here with this fully kitted out camera with the Red name on it, you're able to actually charge a little bit of money for that. And they're willing to give it to you because they're not going to purchase this. And also they are going to be like, oh, you know what? This setup is here for a reason. They bought this Red camera for a reason, to give us the best image quality possible. I'm willing to pay for that kit. And that was the other reason I bought it. I wanted to be able to live in that middle space, or having a camera that had higher quality than the Blackmagic cameras, but also had the name to back it up to make sure that clients felt good on set. And this is something that actually matters, whether you want it to or not. I don't want it to matter. I don't care. I'll shoot on a Blackmagic pocket camera. I don't care. From a business standpoint, this made the most sense for me. So I feel like there's a lot more I can talk about when it comes to this camera. I can sit here and babble all day about it. So I'll probably make a second video kind of breaking down my rig and how I used it recently on a commercial, and things I might tweak a little bit and add to it, or the things that I really like about this rig, and a few other reasons I chose the Red Komodo, like having the ability to have the speed booster or not. That's something I want to talk about quite a bit. Full frame versus not full frame, and what that can do for me with this camera and the camera's form factor and stuff like that. So I'm going to save that for another video. So subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you can see that coming. And until next time, guys, I'm Mr. Sakurai. See ya.